Hi all, welcome back. We're going to continue talking about data distributions, specifically mean, median, mode, range, and outliers. This is very important because you will be tested on this on the SAT, and we've noticed a lot of these questions coming up. So please make sure you know the difference and can define them and find each one of them, okay? So we'll start with mean. That's the average of the data where we add up all the numbers and divide by the number of numbers we have. Median is the middle number, remembering we need to order those numbers from least to greatest before we do anything. And remember, for those of you who are driving, median, like on the highway, is the middle of the highway. So we're finding the middle number. Mode is the most frequent number. There can be more than one mode or no mode. Range is the difference between the highest and the lowest number. So that just kind of tells us how many numbers we have between our highest and lowest number. And an outlier is a number that is either much higher or much lower than the rest of our data. And that can really throw off a set of data. So sometimes we will remove it, and we will discuss that later in our example. So we're going to find the mean, median, mode, and range of the data set. So we have the number of hours that CJ worked on homework for 7 days. We have 3 hours, 8, 4, 6, 5, 12, and another 4 hours. So the mean, remember when we are finding the mean, we are going to add up all the numbers and divide by how many we have, which I have written out for us. So we have 3 plus 8 plus 4 plus 6 plus 5 plus 12 plus 4, all divided by 7 because we have 7 pieces of data. So that would add up to 42 divided by 7, which is 6 hours. So CJ is spending an average of 6 hours a night on his homework. The median, we are going to put all of the numbers in order, which I have done. So we have 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12. And remember, if you need to pause this video at any time to keep up, please do so. And when we find the middle number, we can cross off some numbers. So I crossed off one from each side. So maybe you just go boom, 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 boom. And we're left with 5 in the middle. In our next example, we'll talk about what we do as a reminder when there's 2 numbers in the middle. Okay, so 5 hours. So typically the mean and median should be fairly close to each other. An hour is still a little bit of a difference, but we'll see why that happens in just a minute. Mode is the most frequent number. And our most frequent number in this one is 4 because it's repeated twice. Okay. If the second 4 had not been there, there would have been no mode. If I had added another 5 to this data set, maybe I liked in my 8th day of homework, then the mode would have been 4 and 5. So there can be more than one mode or no mode or just one. Okay. Range is just the highest minus the lowest. And our highest here was 12 minus our lowest, which was 3, which would be 9. So we have a range of 9 hours of homework per night. And hopefully none of you are spending 12 hours of homework in a day right now. If you are for my class, let me know. We'll have a little chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at outliers. So 12 is an outlier in this data set. There's a very mathematical way to calculate how to figure out what is an outlier, but today we're just going to kind of eyeball it. So if we're looking at this data set, we have 3, 8, 4, 6, 5. Those are all fairly close together. 12, though, is 4 away from the next score, whereas everything else is between 1 and 2 away. So we're going to take our data and just get rid of the 12. So we're going to recalculate everything that we need to. So the mean, I'm going to add 3 plus 8 plus 4 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4, and I'll divide that by 6, because now I only have 6 numbers. And if I do that, we're going to get a 30 on the top, divided by 6, which equals 5 hours. Okay, so a little different than what we had before, right? We're going from 6 hours to 5 hours. So we're spending a little less time on our homework if we take out that weird day where we spend a lot of time on homework, right? Median, same idea. We are going to line up all the numbers in order. And when we do that, we're going to have 2 middle numbers. Sorry guys, I don't have my water near me, so I'm dying apparently. So between 4 and 5, I would just do 4 plus 5 divided by 2, which is 9 divided by 2, which equals 4.5, if you don't remember that off the top of your head. If you can see that the number that's going to equally be between 4 and 5 is 4.5, then you can just tell me that's 4.5, okay? And range is going to change just a little bit because we're going to do 8 minus 3, which is 5, so it actually kind of changes a lot. So if we look at this, the change between mean and median here is only 0.5, whereas before it was an hour. So now we've gotten that mean and median a lot closer together, which is what we want to happen when we get rid of that outlier. So this data makes a lot more sense than it did before with that 12 hours, just because that kind of threw off our data. So they will do that a lot in different projects and things because an outlier might be like a one case scenario that might never happen again, or it doesn't happen very often. So we don't want to use that in decisions we make for whatever the data set is telling us, right? Like I don't want to tell someone, oh, you're going to spend an average of 6 hours a night on homework when this person spent 12-hour day, and probably very few people will do that. So 5 hours would be a much more realistic number. All right, now we're going to talk about quartiles, and I had to make this video a second time, so that's why that was written out there already. I apologize. So quartiles, quart usually means 4, okay, like quarters, okay? So when we're looking at data, we have our lowest value and highest value, which we've seen before. And we like to be able to separate our data into 4 chunks, okay? And we like that because chunks of 4 is 25%, right? So each one of these chunks is 25%. So this is the end of the first quartile, or which we call Q1, end of the second quartile, which we call Q2, fourth quartile, Q3, and then the highest value is the end of the fourth quarter. Okay? And what this does is we can say, okay, well, I know that if this was my score, I can say, oh, I was below 75% of people, so maybe I was the best in the race, right? I had the lowest time, so I was below 75% of people. Maybe I was above 75% of people. Excuse me, sorry guys. Okay, so quartiles can just help us dissect data. So anytime you see yourself in a percentile, like, oh, I was in the 88th percentile, there's a similar calculation to that as we would do with quartiles. Okay, so the Q1 is the median, or the middle of the first half of the data, not including the median. And Q3 is the median of the second half of the data, not including the median. Okay, so we have to find Q2 first, which we also call our median. So we've looked at a softball scores here. There are 20 scores, and I put them in order already for you, but you should always double check that. We're going to find the middle number. So I'm going to cross off the first 5 and the second 5 here, and then maybe 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then maybe cross off from 1s here. Now, when this happens, between 7 and 8, that number would be 7.5, which I've written below this little banner here, but I'll write it there before I move it. Okay. Now that 7.5 is not in our data set, so we're just going to take our halves, not including that median. Okay, so we have the first half and the second half of data. So I want to cut that in half again. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. And that number is going to be between 4 and 4, which means 4 for us. And again, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think I had 5 on that one. So it's between 10 and 10. Okay, so that gives us 10 for our quartile 3. Okay, so we have Q1, Q2, and Q3. You have to find Q2 first in order to find Q1 and Q3. We did cover this in Math 7, so this should be kind of familiar to you. Okay, so what this does is tell me, okay, 25% of the data is between the numbers 2 and 4. Another 25% is between the numbers 4 and 7.5. Another 25% is between 7.5 and 10. And the rest is between 10 and 14. So I can say 25% of my girls are 25% of our games we're scoring 10 or more points. Woo! 50% of our games we're scoring between 4 and 10 points. 25% of the games are scoring below 4 points. So what can we do to help with those 25% of games? Okay, I hope that